Hey everyone, happy to be with you today. So, I'm kind of imagining in my mind you at home chilling, just, I don't know, with a glass of wine in your hand or a beer, or a coffee, apple juice, whatever you're drinking, just relaxed at home. Now, I know everybody's not going to be like that. Maybe you're, in the car jogging. I don't know what you're up to, but that's kind of the feeling I want today because I want it to be kind of just a dialogue together. Uh, and I think it will connect and make sense because this is today's going to be about pushback, what I think of kind of critical feedback that I think is really important, particularly in Montessori today, but in the broader world as well. And I'll get to that. I want to open though with a story related to this, which is, I mean, it came way back. So it's when I was, I'd say 9 or 10 years old, so fourth or fifth grade. We were headed, I don't remember where we were going, I think like an aquarium or something like that, but we were on the bus. I'm in the back with a few buddies, and we are discussing, of all things, God. Like, does God exist? Like, this is what we were talking about. It's kind of cool to think about that. Some young kids are talking about these big ideas. Um, but anyways, we were going back and forth, having discussion, maybe some debate. I don't know. And I had said, God couldn't exist because then how could babies be killed? That was my argument. That's my deep argument back then. And now this is not a we're not talking about religion today, but this is just the example. What happened afterwards is what's important. So again, I said, there can't be a God because he wouldn't let babies die. I said that, and I mean, so quick, like rapid fire. This woman comes charging over, and I'm just assuming it's like a mom, chaperone, or so forth. She says, "If you believe that, you are going to hell." And she just yelled that at me. Like, again, this is a full grown woman yelling it at a child. Now, again, I'm not interested in a debate about does God exist or not. That's for another day. What I am interested in is that in that moment, I don't remember what I did, but I know for sure that I it wasn't a time for me to go, "Oh, that's an interesting position. You want to talk about it?" Like, that was not the time. She was not coming back there to have a discussion. She was coming back to be an authority to tell me what's what, you know? Um, so it just stood in my life as an example of something that I don't like. I don't want to ever be like that, where I'm using my authority as an adult to tell somebody, in this case, a child, I know what's right. You don't. Believe me. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, well, you're in for some deep trouble, maybe even hell at the, after you die or something. Which, I mean, again, this is not nice to tell a kid for sure. But my emphasis here is on I don't like any authority figure that's using their authority to kind of tell you, I've got the truth. You're going to listen to me, or you should listen to me without argument, without evidence, without anything. It's just not something I enjoy in life. Now, of course, we're always going to have authority. There's going to be policemen, and I think it's legitimate. Um, Military parents are an authority figure. As a teacher, you don't want to misuse this authority, but you are an authority. What I'm talking about here is that when there's no room for dialogue. Okay. Now, when does this come up? Well, it comes up because I think a lot of times people say, I have the truth and I'm going to tell people the truth. And that's the way it is. I mean, we see this a lot in cultish behavior, right? We definitely see this a lot in kind of um, sometimes in religions where they go crazy and they force their beliefs on others, right? There's no Q&A at some kind of like terrorist organization. Nobody comes in and goes, hey, you know what, I think this is wrong, can I rate? No, you follow the line, you know what I'm saying? So now I'm raising this today because in my professional life, when I'm giving a talk or a workshop, what's really awesome, because I'll be discussing Montessori or something that have to do with discipline or with children or all three together. I always tell the audience, if you disagree with something I'm saying, or if I'm presenting something about Montessori education or Montessori parenting, and you think, man, Maria Montessori doesn't know what she's talking about, raise it. Don't just be like, oh, I don't want to raise it. I don't want to upset this guy, or, we can't say something that's, in disagreement. I want that type of feedback. I want that type of pushback because that's where we really get into the meat of things. You know, um, I mean, when I first got into Montessori, I questioned everything. I still do question everything. And there's some things I might not agree with. I don't know, but we got to push back on things. Now, the issue is on this podcast, Montessori Education Podcast, whether I'm doing a solo podcast where there's no audience to push back, or if I'm with a guest who's usually sympathetic to things I'm saying, or I'm sympathetic to what she or he is saying, um, they're definitely sympathetic to Montessori. The issue is we're not seeing a lot of pushback, or you guys out there aren't seeing a lot of pushback or critical feedback. So what I want to do is get into more of that kind of thing. So today I'm going to go through two examples of actual pushback or feedback I got. Both of these were online, so I'm going to share them with you. The first one's kind of, sweet. I think it's a great question. The second one I think is a really great question, but he came out a little bit stronger, so you'll see some attitude with this one, and then we'll go from there. So the first one, it is from a woman named Shan Gao. She commented on a YouTube video, which was really basically one of my last podcast episodes. And just for the context there, I think the episode was called, what was it? The Montessori Toy Story. And the background there is that listener had told me this story about her son, who's I think just was turning 4. He decided 7 a.m. in the morning, I'm going to go shopping. He left the house, went a few blocks down to the store that they normally go to, and just went like, I'm going to go shopping. As it seems that the police somehow got to him. I don't want to go rehash the whole thing. Called the parents and said, "Hey, your son's over here at this store. He says he's going to go shopping. You want to pick him up?" And the police officer had mentioned that the son's like, "Well, I don't really need my parents. I'm good. I can shop here." So I discussed this and talked a lot about confidence and how awesome it is that Montessori children tend to be confident. Like that, I feel that I can do things, independence, that type of thing. So that's the background for it. So here's her comment. Hey, Jesse, what a great story. I love how the Montessori approach cherishes and grows the self confidence in children like a precious flower bud, especially for today's world where insecurity easily erodes adolescent identity and influences their behavior. On the other hand, I also have some unanswered questions about confidence or overconfidence. My 3.5-year-old girl is very confident socially with like age children as well as adults, which is great. But I have also noticed times that she is keen to show me how something works without fully understanding it. In contrast to traditional school kids who are probably more used to being shown the full process before copying it. I feel at this age it may be more important to not hammer the confidence than teaching humility, which is a much more front cortex thought process. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Thank you. Okay. So the first thing I would say is thank you very much for that pushback, because I agree with you. There's something about, we don't want to be, emphasizing confidence when sometimes these kids are, it's not really confidence. It's just like overconfidence. And at times it might even seem like an adult arrogance almost. So we don't want to be emphasizing that. The thing is, I think almost developmentally, because I'm sure parents out there or teachers, if you're working with 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they tend to say they know a lot more than they actually know. And I think there's something there with just working your knowledge, getting a grasp of it, sharing with others that necessitates that there's some kind of, saying like, somebody says, "Oh, how old is your dad?" And the girl's like, "Oh, he's 145 years old." Like that's kind of, she's heard numbers, she's experimenting. So there might be a real genuine element of development that just necessitates that type of thing. Now, in adults, we surely don't appreciate that type of overconfidence in something that clearly the person doesn't know what they're talking about. We're getting a lot of that today in politics, where everybody just seems to know, "Oh, I know the truth and I'm going to tell you 100%." When you're like, wait a second, I just read a different fact that contradicts that. So that person has overconfidence, and it's not really an attractive quality. In kids, I think we need to be very careful not to kind of smack that down and be like, "Are you sure your dad is 100 and something years old?" Or if they're explaining something about trees and you were like, "Wait a second, is that really true?" You don't want to smack them down. You could potentially ask like, "Oh, really? That's a really large number." You're not negating it, but you're just commenting, to aid them to think a little bit more about it. Maybe, I don't know, but we don't want to go giving them lessons in this case, Sean, and you were saying to maybe teach more humility or raise more humility. And I don't know if you were meaning that for, towards the child, or for us as educators to kind of say, "Hey, we want to emphasize humility in our teaching." But I think also on that other end, then I think of it as humbleness, by the way. I think humility is kind of like bowing your head down and keeping your eyes low. Like, like even think about the word humiliated, like you feel low. I don't think we want to ever, as human beings, emphasize something of feeling low. Humble to me is a little bit better of a word. It means basically like, "Hey, I got a lot. I don't know everything here, at least in knowledge wise." So I think with children, when we see that, we want to say, "Oh, yeah, like, I know I'll see some children, maybe they're working on the geography work, and they've just mastered the continents, but now it's like getting into these countries. There's so many of them. It's like, oh, I just learned the continents, but there's so much to learn, and I don't know it all. There's almost like a happiness with it, but that's a happy humbleness. And I think that's something that's cool to see. And I think that's a part of Montessori too. It's not that these children are all independent, like, I know everything, and my math scores are off the charts. Like that's not what we're trying to push here. But I think these what we're helping children to get is that I know what I know, and there's a lot of other stuff that I don't know, and that's cool, and I'm excited to learn it. So I think it's a little bit of both. So I appreciate you raising the fact that maybe overemphasizing the idea of confidence in Montessori or independence might not be the best. So you want to balance it with what is a genuine confidence and not overconfidence or arrogance. And I think that humbleness does go hand in hand with confidence in Montessori and in life. So thank you very much for that pushback. That's my quick notes on it. I mean, we can go back and forth and forever on some of these topics, but so anyways, that's an example of something that maybe somebody would ask me in a talk, a live talk or workshop, and we go back and forth. But on podcasts, don't get too often, right? The second one is a little bit more intense. Okay. So I did a talk, I think it was in Arizona, called Is Montessori Worth It? And it's on YouTube. And this guy hops on. All I know is his name is Noldo. I don't know if he ever really wanted anybody to respond or he just wanted to kind of voice his opinion, but he says a lot. So I'll try to answer some of it. I don't know how much I'll get through, but it's intense. Here we go. And again, this was, is Montessori worth it? Is the talk. So I'm basically arguing that, yeah, Montessori is worth it. Spend your money on Montessori for your child because it's going to help your child. So I am confidently, with a little bit of humbleness, if you watch the video, saying this is good for your child. Try it out. Naldo responds, well, to be able to realistically compare if Montessori works, it would have to be comparable. Parents who can afford it are of higher SES, so socioeconomic status, having above average education themselves, having better jobs, less social problems, safer neighborhood, and most probably higher IQ in their genes to start with, compared with average comparable population. Also, a kid in such environment will be surrounded by talented kids more and by problematic kids less, only because the parents are rich. This is not a result of a Montessori system. Okay, there's a lot in there. I can't cover everything. But one thing I want to notice for those of you who know the history of Montessori, you know that it began in a slum. Okay, the children in that slum somehow through Montessori started to become elevated, almost reached the levels of normal children. So children that aren't poor. So just have that as background that Montessori didn't start with just rich kids and rich families, and that's why it was successful. Now, I think he is getting some valid things of if you were trying to do a scientific study, okay, with holding all the variables level, that's I actually believe that will never be possible. We cannot hold all the variables steady across the board. They're all equal, exact ages, exact this, exact that, exact parent level of income, exact college. Did all their parents go to college? It's very, very hard to do a kind of organized study like that. But when we look at the history of Montessori, you'll see that it's not just in affluent areas. It's in poor, affluent, all over from the bottom to the top. I mean, I've seen schools in slums of India, Africa, and they don't even have money to buy tools, materials, so they make the materials. That I've seen all the way in the most wealthy places that have I'm talking like classes that cost like $50,000 for one class, just the materials alone, that type of thing. And they've shown that you'll see across the board, these children are learning. So it's not like one grows exponentially more because their parents are rich, because they're in a rich neighborhood. You just don't see that. You see more consistent results. And if anything, I got to tell you, this is anecdotal. This is in my experience. The poorer the children that come into Montessori and have that experience, the easier and the quicker they're actually learning. Now, I say that on average from what I've seen, and I think it has to do with they're just so in awe of the environment and the fact that this is mine. Where a lot of rich kids, they already have so much stuff that's like, oh, here's some more stuff. At least in the beginning, that's the feeling. Okay. And again, that's anecdotal, but I'm just putting that out there. So that's just a little bit of what Naldo is saying. Here's second. Second, it would be comparable only with schools where teachers are paid the same and where there's same few kids per class. So this is telling that it says same few kids per class. So Naldo, I don't think you've really studied Montessori, because Montessori a lot of times is about having more children per teacher. So I know traditionally with when there's arguments about rich versus poor, it's usually oh, these private schools, they have like 1-to-4 ratio, where in public school it's 1-to-30. Generally speaking, with Montessori, they want higher ratios. So we have to explain to parents why there's only one teacher for, say, 12 or even 24 students. Okay. So that's not a good argument there with Naldo. Um, but he also says where teachers are paid more. So I think the assumption there is that if the teachers are paid more money, then somehow your child is going to learn more. And I can tell you anecdotally, and I mean, if they could do a study on this, I'm sure it would show pay is not going to be what it equates to better outcomes with children. I know when I first started teaching, I think I was making maybe $35,000. And man, I love my interactions with kids. I didn't even think about the money. Like it wasn't like I was getting paid nothing. I felt like I was getting paid. Like, how am I getting paid this much money to do something so much fun? So I'd be careful to jump to conclusions about how much a person makes, um, being equivalent or equated with how good of a teacher they are. I don't think that's the case. Um, Here's a little bit of a kind of wild comment he makes, throw in. Unfortunately, most of the comparative studies come from the US, where any education is disastrous and the public one is pure Hiroshima. So this is the thing with sometimes with with pushback, you get people that want to throw in a little bit of random comments about their views. So all of American schools are crap, and they're not just crap. They're Hiroshima, like bomb exploded on them, basically. Uh, Not the most the kindest way to put this, but that's what he's saying. There's not really much to argue there. What are you going to say? Yeah, every single school in America is horrible. It's the worst it ever is. Come on. That's just pure nonsense. And I would talk like this. If we were in a talk, like I love chatting with parents, even admin. I think they love it because we go back and forth, and we're human beings talking with each other. Like I don't really disrespect people. It's more of like a conversation. So, anyways, here he keeps going. Want to see pros and cons? Compare academic results of students on universities or when applying for jobs, because that's where education matters after Montessori and after a classic school of similar monthly cost. Or maybe even better, ask some hiring HR personalist, headhunter, what is his experience with applicants with Montessori education on average? Noldo, if you're listening, man, I think this is a great question, because he's like, hey, what are we after? We're not actually after, somebody saying, oh, that's a successful child because I say so. Let's get some data here. What are HR people that are hiring? What do they want? What do they see that's advantageous for Montessori versus even a rich private school? So I think that's pretty interesting. I don't think this is going to be an easy study. I mean, how many Montessori people are applying to jobs compared to, like, I don't know, it must be like 90+% of kids are going to traditional school, conventional school, probably much higher than that, actually. So you don't get a lot of it to do studies, but I think it's interesting to think about. We want to be thinking about, is Montessori, or is education generally, whatever you happen to be, is it aiding the child to get a job that he really wants? Is it aiding him to be a creative human being amongst his colleagues and peers? Is it enabling him to do well on applications, that type of thing. So I think that's an important point. It's not everything, as we'll get to. It's not about that. Doesn't seem like thinking about the whole child, but it's something there. All right. Third, I do not like abundance of competitiveness, but I was in a very hard school and I wanted to be better than other kids. I wanted good grades. I was given tasks and workload surely bigger and more difficult I would have ever asked for myself as a kid, but the drill worked. Take a look at sports. No elite athlete was ever trained only on the basis of complete voluntariness. The harder the coach or teacher is, the better results are. Okay, first, I want to just take away a myth. It's not everything is voluntary in Montessori, right? Like if a child's just like, you know what, I'm going to stay inside while all the kids go outside and play. Well, who's he going to stay with? There's no teacher in there. He has to come outside. So I don't want to pretend that Montessori is just like, oh, kids just get to decide whatever they want. So I think, Noldo, you might have a misunderstanding of some of Montessori. And then I just want to throw out another thing here. Sports with star athletes, at some point, it's a choice. I want to be the most, excuse my language, badass athlete in the world in soccer or basketball. And you say, I need to do what it takes to get to that level. And I love playing this sport, but I want to be the best I can be. You hire a coach to push you hard, hard, hard. Okay. If I'm paying money to somebody and they start telling me you better do this, I'm not like, well, I want to do what I want to do. No, I'm paying you money to push me, push me. So that's very much different than in a Montessori classroom. And what you said, you basically said it worked that they pushed you. It worked for what? It worked so that you can get good grades? Well, did you learn anything, or were you able to just fill in bubble tests? And did you enjoy the learning? Are you a person who actually continues to love learning today? Because those are really important. So I think it's a broader conception in Montessori about what learning means, what getting good grades would even mean, or even getting into good colleges. So I think we need to be thinking about this much more broadly than Noldo it seems here. This is last line is very telling to me. Also, kids have to get used to do tasks they do not enjoy that much because that's how life is. I think this is somewhat now. If you're talking about, of course, we got to, something I got to take out the trash tonight. Actually, it's getting dark now behind me. I got to get the trash out. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just sit here and chat with you guys a little bit longer. I got to do it. I don't think that's what Noldo's talking about. I think you're kind of getting at the world as a kind of a place where we don't really get to do what we want. We have to do what needs to be done. I have a different view of the world. I think there's things that you have to do that you might not like to do, but generally speaking, you try to make the best of this life and enjoy the heck out of it. So we might have a different philosophy on life, and Montessori is very much a philosophy of there's things that you must do in life and do them well, but go after what you love doing. And if you love doing it and you learn and continue to learn and continue to grow, you're gonna kick butt at it. So that's different of philosophy. Anyways, that's another pushback. Okay, from Noldo. So Noldo, thank you very much. He commented, I think it was on a YouTube video. Yeah, it was on a YouTube video. All right. So I got two examples of pushback. I did want to say, there's a limit to pushback. Okay. Now I'm talking about pushback, but I don't mean somebody coming at you and just cursing you out or doing something crazy to you. Like, that's not pushback. That's being, it could be vulgar, it could be inappropriate, it could be threatening. That's not what I'm talking about. Actually, I'll give you an example of this. So, and I call this, by the way, when I'm doing talks to admin and they need to make decisions with parents, I say you need to know what your line in the sandbox is. The line in the sand, but since we're an education, line in the sandbox, what's your limit? And you have to let the parent know if they step over your limit, then you guys got some trouble. So I remember I was a manager at Barnes and Noble, early 20s, or I was sorry, not a manager. I wasn't that high up, guys. I was an assistant manager at the time. But anyways, I had some authority. And all of a sudden I hear some yelling in the front, where you go and check out. And I started walking up, and one of my colleagues, who, was quote managing at the time, but I think of her as a colleague. She was young. She might have been younger than I was. She must have been like 18. I might have been 22. Really, really sweet girl. But this woman is shouting at her, like just berating her. So I go up, I said, "Hey, is everything okay here?" And I think that I forgot what the girl's name was, who was the helper or the checkout girl, but she said, "Oh, I was just putting the book, and I asked her, do you want a bag or do you not want a bag?" And that's it. And the woman said, and I said, "Ma'am, is everything right?" And this is the first thing she says, "This bitch," and she points at the girl. So I gotta tell you, I had a thought, like it was very quick. It was like, this is unacceptable. I said, "Ma'am, if you continue to talk like that, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. If you want to have a discussion, we can, but if you continue to talk like that, you're going to have to leave." Just like that. So I had an automatic sense, I guess, in this moment of where my line was at. But that's not, what she's offering is not pushback. She's just being completely rude. So I don't want to, if I'm at a talk and somebody just gets up and starts shouting me down, like, "You suck, I'm not answering that. Like, hopefully there's security to let them out. This is not time for a discussion. You have to have a civil discussion. So anyways, I want to note that with pushback. It's kind of a minor thing, but I don't know, it's important. I wonder what you would have done in my situation with that person up front, like, anyhow, maybe write in. I always love hearing back from you guys. Okay. My Montessori pushback, I was thinking, I wrote some down here, like maybe I should give an example of my pushback from Montessori. So I'm all about Montessori. If you've been listening, I love Montessori. There's so much to it. I'm not going to tell you something I don't like about Montessori, the philosophy of the education. What I'm going to tell you is some pushback on the movement, the Montessori movement. And I'll just give you an example. So I went to a conference, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 5 years ago, maybe even less. I don't remember how long. Big conference. So, high end conference in Montessori. And they had a keynote speaker. And he was talking about a topic that I know a lot about. And I don't mean to be, arrogant. Oh, I know everything, but I know a lot about. And what he was saying just was not, in my mind, true, and it was actually not good. But it sounded very sweet and caring about young children. So at the end of his talk, everybody there must have been like 800, 900, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people. Everybody got up. I don't know if there were some other people that did not get up, but and I'm left like they were going to do a standing ovation. And I was thinking, listen, I think he's a nice guy, but what he's saying is not true. Uh, and I'm like, oh man, well, I'm looking around like, oh, what do you do? Um, so I just stayed seated. Like I couldn't just pretend that I'm going to give this man a standing ovation. But the point here that was weird to me is like, can all of these people think this is right and so right that this man deserves a standing ovation? When I know something he's saying is factually incorrect. And it's a big part of his whole presentation of how he approaches with children. This was not a Montessorian, by the way. It was somebody from the outside who was, they thought they had similar ideas. That's why they brought him in to speak for Montessorians. So what I think is happening, I'm going to say I'm certain there are young Montessorians in that audience that have no clue if what he's saying is true or false. They're just, this is what we do. We cheer this guy. So there is a little bit of a herd mentality in our movement today. Some people might be offended by that. That's fine. Push back. Tell me you don't agree. So I think there's a little cultish element and herd mentality in some of this stuff. So I think it's really important that we push back, even on maybe trainers, like because at the end of the day, I'm not the answer. I'm not the truth. I'm not the woman on the bus coming up and being like, I know what's true. If you don't agree, you're dead or you're going to hell or you're immoral. We shouldn't treat trainers like they know everything. We should ask them questions if we disagree or we don't know. We're curious. You push back. Trainers, teachers, heads of school. We need to have dialogue, not just kind of bow down. Anyways, I'm certain that some people there actually thought what he said was true, and that's awesome. And I can have that discussion. But what I'm saying is, a certain number just went with the crowd, and I think that's a dangerous thing. I think is happening more often today in the quote Montessori movement, and I'm bummed about it. So that's my pushback on Montessori. Love to hear what other people think. What else do I got? Oh, here's a funny one, real quick. I think you guys will appreciate it. I was giving a talk once, and a dad raised his hand, and this comes up every now and again. But dad raised his hand. He's kind of like, coming up here, and I could tell that people around knew this was like somewhat of an arrogant dad. And he gets up and he says, "Oh, you said all this about Montessori. It's going to do this and that. I mean, I didn't go to Montessori, and I turned out fine." And that's what he says. I don't know, maybe 100 people in the audience. And I like to play around, and have a good time in a very, very sweet way. But I said, he said, "I didn't go to Montessori and I turned out fine." And I just looked at him and I said, "Did you? Like, did you turn out fine?" And I kind of chuckled and said, "Listen, I'm with you. Like, I went to traditional school, public school. I feel like I'm pretty good. Like, I'm pretty good. But how much work did I have to do to overcome some of the crap that I got? How much wasted time did I spend in a math class that was just pure like fill in the bubbles and then you forget it, versus actually loving learning, interacting with peers throughout the day instead of like only at recess. There's so many other things that we could have grown as. So you as a father, can you think of anything in your life that you would have liked to do a little bit more and to grow, maybe play an instrument, learn more about a country that you're interested in where you weren't allowed to because you were sitting in a seat being told what you're supposed to think about everything at the same time as your peers? Is there anything like that? We connected in that way. So it turned into a really cool moment, but it was a funny pushback. And I love that kind of pushback. He's like, "I turned out fine." So I want to hear all pushback. So anyway, just another cool example of pushback and how we went back and forth. That's it for the examples. So basically, what I want to get across here is that pushback, critical feedback is huge. I want to hear more about it. I want to share more of it with you. So I'm going to be doing every now and again when I feel like I've got some good pushback, or I'm thinking about even maybe doing live episodes with this every now and again. So if you're interested in maybe being live on here and asking questions or pushing back in person, write in the comment section whether you're watching this on YouTube or where it was shared. I don't know, wherever it's being shared. Or write me personally, email Jesse, Jesse at MontessoriEducation.com. Tell me, yeah, I'd love to do a live show. Here's some pushback. Or you could just say, I'd love to be on live and just listen in. But anyways, the point is I'm going to do every now and again, I'll do one of these shows, which is basically called Montessori Pushback. And it's feedback from you listeners, watchers about what I'm saying or about Montessori education or about anything really, just pushback. I think that's what I got for you. A few closing comments. Of course, if you enjoyed today, please rate this show. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, wherever you can rate it, please do it. Okay, it's so helpful. And share it with your friends, share it online, like it, love it, whatever platform you're using and what they allow, get it out there to other people. That's it on that note. Two personal notes. One thing I want to tell you is, so I don't know, was it 2 days ago? Ragnar, my 9-month-old now, my wife and I was in here in this room, and I could tell it's like, oh, he makes a certain noise when he needs to go to the bathroom, and we're changing him like a normal infant, and I could tell he's about to poop. So I said, Ragnar, you're gonna poop? He looked at me like, who knows? And I carried him and said, well, it seems like you're gonna poop. Carried him over to the toilet. He had his first poop in the toilet. It was so cool. Anyhow, I thought that was cool to share with you guys. Other point I want to note, I'm doing a keynote in Miami. So I live in South Florida. Man, it is dark in here now. Man, things have changed. Anyways, I live about an hour north of Miami, but I'm going to be doing a keynote in Miami at the Montessori Florida Coalition on the 28th of this month. That's Saturday. That's that's less than 2 weeks away. So if you're around or if you want to come, this is going to be a goodie. This is rekindling our fire. I'm so stoked for this one. So if you're around, I don't know, I think they're going to film it, but this is one you're going to want to be in person if you can. So come on out. And I'll end with an extra funny comment. This is on the video, What is Montessori? If you have not seen that one, that's one of the most popular videos I made on YouTube, basically 18-minute intro to Montessori. But there's a girl in it. She thinks she's 2 years old. She sets the full table for the whole classroom. She's so cute and so effective, so confident, going back to that early story. And this woman hops on, and I think this is the top comment on the video. It's got something like, I don't know, 500, 600 likes or something. She says, a 2-year-old can set a table better than my boyfriend. That's her comment on the video. Anyways, that's not really pushback. I think that's like, man, this is amazing that a 2-year-old can do this, but I want to share. It's always made me laugh. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today. Keep the pushback coming. And of course, I love good feedback too. So please keep the positive comment. I get messages from you guys and comments, and it's wonderful to have. It's good to be with you. Hope you're enjoying that drink still, or that jog, or if you're driving your kids to school or whatnot. I think I said some bad words on this show, so hopefully that didn't pop through. Anyways, enjoy being with you guys. We'll talk soon. Adios.